What's going on, guys? If you haven't heard already, all 10 houses for Halloween Horror Nights have been officially announced as of last week. And if you're a big fan, you probably already knew that. But this is something I've been waiting for. I wait every year for this event. I've been going since 2004 to Halloween Horror Nights, and I haven't missed a year. I always get the express pass, so I always go more than once. It's really worth the money. And the funny thing is, I'm the type of person that likes Christmas time over Halloween time. And even though that's the case, Halloween Horror Nights is an event I just cannot miss. I love the work that Universal does in order to create these houses and just the atmosphere that you're in within that park, because I go to Universal a lot too, and being in that park feels completely different from the atmosphere you feel in Halloween Horror Nights. But going off that, as I said before, all 10 houses have been announced, and usually it's only 8 houses. Up until a few years ago, they bumped it up to 2. So that can be challenging for somebody that only is able to go one night. But for someone that has a pass, it makes it worth your while because you can just go back again. But it's very exciting to see that they have added more houses. This year, we got quite an interesting lineup. Some that I saw coming. And usually another thing with Halloween Horror Nights, you usually see a theme. You see that something is revolving around these houses, what they're really going around the storyline of it all. And up until a few years ago, they kind of left that whole theming thing behind. And these houses are just kind of standalone, and they're just doing their own thing. And you notice half of the houses are really based off of shows and movies. And the other ones are just original takes on their houses. But this video here is just recapping the 10 houses and just giving you my breakdown on what we may expect to see once we're actually at the event. But tell me, guys, in the comments below, are you a big Halloween Horror Nights fan? If you have a favorite year that you've gone since this all started in 1990, do you have a favorite house? There's so many houses, and I love to hear what everyone's favorite house is. I don't honestly have a favorite house because I love them all. I just, if I had to think of one right now, it'd take me a while because there's just so many. But leave your comments below, guys, and don't forget, consider clicking on the subscribe button and the bell in order to hear any more content from me for your future enjoyment. The first ones that I want to talk about that are probably easy to explain on what we'll expect are the ones based off of movies and shows. And let's start with the most obvious one, Stranger Things. It should be a no-brainer to a lot of people that this house is coming back because we had it last year, and that was primarily season 1 and 2, of course. This one's going to be obviously season 3, but the reason why I think it's so obvious that it's coming back again is, one, being the show is so popular, but being that they made it into a house last year, it was extremely popular. I've never seen Halloween Horror Nights so busy up until last year, and I believe it's because of Stranger Things. I'm thinking there were people that never even been to Halloween Horror Nights, and they just came to this event just for that house. And I waited in that line one time, and the majority of the length of the time waiting for that house was between maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours. I do remember seeing that, and it was a great house, but I wasn't willing to wait that long for that house. What made the house work, though, from last year was they kept the music from the show. The essence of the 80s that was there. The demigorgs were perfectly done, and it worked. It just felt like the show. So I think that's what we're going to expect, obviously enough, from this house for season 3. Difference is the environment's going to change. Most of season 3 was at a mall. It was at a carnival, and just things were just a little bit different, but you're still going to get that same essence, of course, that we did see from last year. So this is the one I'm really looking forward to, but I'm also expecting it to be really busy, mainly because of this house. Next house was announced a few weeks ago, and just tonight I was on Facebook, and I'm a part of a page on there called Halloween Horror Nights, and it's a group that is, they're just fans of that event. And someone said they watched this particular movie in which this house is based from, and they said they did not like it, and they were surprised that this is being made into a house for Halloween Horror Nights. The movie I'm talking about, of course, is Jordan Peele's Us. Now, I can understand there were a lot of people that didn't like this movie. I, on the other hand, loved it. I thought it was just a very intelligent take on a horror film. And for some people, they may not like that stuff. They may like the more simplistic type of horror films, slasher movies, demonic possession. This one is just a movie that's a horror film, but it has an underlying message to it. And that's what Jordan Peele has done, especially with Get Out a few years earlier. But I think this movie had great potential in becoming a Halloween Horror Nights house. I even thought this should have been a house before it was even announced as one. And it's just the environment that this movie takes place within, and with the doppelgangers, the tethered, and just the set pieces, and even the music. Once again, the music, all of this fits perfectly as elements to be incorporated into a house. This is probably one of the few houses here that I have a perfect visualization on what to expect. The tethered underground, probably one of the most obvious choices to be put into this house. I can see us walking through those corridors. That is a perfect example on how you could take something from a movie or show and incorporate it into a Halloween Horror Nights house. Not only that set, but when they see the carnival at Santa Cruz at the beginning of the film and towards the end, that's another good example. The two houses where the two main families are throughout the movie, another good example. The characters that we'll see all around the house, they're all dressed in the red jumpsuits, and they have the scissors in their hands. I mean, I find it all threatening. I mean, it's just really surprising that I found people saying that this was a stupid idea for us to be made into a Halloween Horror Nights house, but it makes sense. It has all the elements necessary to make it into a house. So I'm personally really excited about this one, and this is another one that I can see being a pretty long line, because there are a lot of fans of this movie, even though there's some that didn't like it, but this is one that I'm really anticipating. Next house is probably one that I'm personally excited for. Stranger Things and Us, yes, I'm really excited for it. This is one that I have a special place in my heart for, and this is Universal's movie Monsters. This is one that it's the essence of Universal horror movies. This is what started it all in the 1930s with the likes of Frankenstein, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Wolfman. Like, these are all characters that have been embedded in our brains. Whether you've seen these movies or not, you know who they are. And here we are, they're going to do a house based on all these characters. Now, throughout the last few years, we've seen them here and there making little appearances, some of them in some of the houses. There was even a house a few years back, I remember it was the House of Wax, where some of these characters were incorporated into that, but it just wasn't the same. And this is what I think is going to be the really true official house that's going to incorporate these classic characters. Usually with some houses that have more than one story to it and more than one character, they would usually break them off and divide it into sections, so you're going from one world into the other. So I can see with this one, you're going to be at one point in Dracula's castle, then all of a sudden you're in Frankenstein's laboratory, then with the Wolfman at the manor that they lived in, and maybe with the Creature of the Black Lagoon, you're at a swamp. So I can see this different environments you're going to be stepping into, and if you're familiar with the movies like I am, you can just visualize what you're going to be seeing with these different sets. And I just got to say, if you haven't seen any of these movies, please, I recommend watching them. Not only are they classics, but they'll just give you a good idea on what to expect when we see it at Halloween Horror Nights, because this is probably one of the best examples of horror movie making at its best. But this is one that I'm just really, really anticipating, and I just hope I'm not disappointed. But this house is just a very personal one that I'm looking forward to, and I just hope it's one that I'm not let down by. Sometimes when there's big houses that I'm really looking forward to, there's a few that I get kind of let down, but this is one I feel they're going to do right, and I just hope it brings a younger crowd and attracts them to this type of house and really have them appreciate these classic characters that have been around for almost 80 years. Next house is probably a fan favorite for everyone, but it was also one that I was kind of surprised to hear that it was being announced as a house, but then it started to make sense. That would be Ghostbusters. The reason why I was kind of surprised at first was that this is a movie that's really kind of a sci-fi horror comedy movie. Now, usually with Halloween Horror Nights, most of the houses there are all meant to scare you, of course. But usually there's one house every year that's kind of like a fun house. It's meant to be fun. You usually have 3D glasses on. And I feel this may be that house, possibly. And it makes sense, of course. So as I, really let it sink in within me, I realized, okay, this makes sense that this is going to be a house. So this is one I'm really looking forward to now. I love the first Ghostbuster film, and most likely this house will be based off of the earlier Ghostbuster films, not the recent one that came out a few years ago. It may give us a glimpse on the new Ghostbuster movie coming out next year, but I wouldn't expect too much of that because they may not want to spoil it for people that want to see the movie, but you never know. But it's going to be cool to see the likes of maybe Slimer, the Marshmallow Man, Zool, just all these characters that I have grown up with watching this movie. So it's probably going to appeal to not only the generation we have now, but the generation of the people that saw it in the 80s. So this is going to be something that I think everyone from young age to older age that are going to be looking forward to. So it's going to be a fun house. I think we're going to get a lot of fun out of this one, and hopefully as the new Ghostbuster film comes out, we may get another Ghostbusters house that's based off of that movie. The next house, which is based off of a movie, kind of has a cult fan following to it. And we had last year a Scare Zone that was based off of the movie as well, and that is Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Now, this is a movie that came out years ago. It's pretty much considered a B horror movie, and if you don't know what that means, it's a movie that is kind of have a campy look to it. It has a campy feel, very kind of cheaply made, low budget, but it ends up being kind of a cult fan favorite to some people. And that's what this movie was. And I've only seen it a couple of times. I don't really remember it as well as I should. And I do have a close friend that actually loves this movie. But from what I do remember, it did creep me out on so many levels. One being that the aliens were clowns. And usually clowns don't scare me. But the way that these clowns were designed in the movie, and if you remember the Scare Zone, they were creepy. And I never forgot them. The other thing that really stayed with me within the movie was how they take their victims, the humans, and they wrap them up in these cotton candy cocoons, and they have them hanging from the walls, and all you see are the victims' faces. So that's something I just never forgot. So that's something I expect to see in the house, seeing those cocoons made out of cotton candy just hanging around everywhere, these clowns everywhere. And being that I can't remember the movie, all I can say is that if you remember the Scare Zone from last year, my theory is that you're pretty much going to get what you saw in that Scare Zone being transported into a house, just expanded a bit more. So I'm looking forward to this one. This is not on my list on my most anticipated houses, but sometimes, just like I said, there's ones that I really anticipate that are not as good. The ones that are my low end of it, I end up usually liking a whole lot more. So this may be one that I may end up liking a lot more than I expected to. The next and final house that's based off of a movie is one that I'm not really looking forward to, and it's a movie I've seen only one time years ago, and I didn't like it so much to the point that I forgot all about it. I may have to watch it all over again before going to this event, and that is A House of a Thousand Corpses. And it makes sense why it's becoming a house, but I remember it was announced last week. This was the last house that was announced. I just wasn't that excited. And the movie, I don't remember it. I don't really remember it, so there's not much I could say about it. But I just remember thinking that Rob Zombie, as a director, I don't really care for him. I've seen his Halloween remakes, and I do remember those, and I did not really like him. And I've seen this. I've seen Devil's Rejects. So those are the two that I really got to watch again, because those were one of his first few movies that he made as a director, and this was his very first film. But I do remember thinking that after it was announced that this does have the potential to be a house. It has the right set pieces, it has the right atmosphere, the right characters, the right music. It all fits to make a house. So I hope I'm proven wrong when going to see this, because as of now, this is really low on my list of the houses I want to see, even lower than their original houses that Universal does, because even some of their houses that are originally made are not really that good. But I'm just hoping I really like this one. But if there's anyone that does love this movie, I'd probably expect them to do top-notch work if you're a big fan of it. So these next four houses are the original ones that Universal does, and you can expect this every single year. They do houses that are strictly from something that they've created on their own. Now, unfortunately, with some of these houses, I feel that they can be a hit or miss. Some of them can be pretty forgettable and just not good at all. Other ones could surprise us, and this year, these four houses actually have a little bit of promise to them. And the first one is probably the one I'm most excited for. And what I'm going to do is just going to read the description off of the site, being that we don't have a lot to go from these houses, being that they're original. The first one is Depths of Fear. This is how the story goes. It's workers of a deep-sea mining company have found themselves in a dire situation. They've delved too deep and encountered a parasitic race of creatures that turn out to be deadly. Panic ensues as you find yourself encountering infected miners and acidic creatures. The pressure builds as the self-destruct sequence counts down to the inevitable implosion of the facility. So being that that's really all we have to go by with this house, it does sound a bit different. I don't recall any other house that is based around being underwater. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if there is one. Maybe I'm just not remembering correctly, or maybe there's one before I started going. But this sounds pretty new. And I will, I appreciate them making these original houses, even though some of them may not be that good. I do respect the fact that they're trying new things, and this is different. So it sounds like we're underwater, and it sounds like it's saying there's a destruct sequence, there's a countdown. So maybe there's something to the fact that something's going to happen if you don't get out in time. So it's a race against the clock type of deal. And on the way, you're meeting all these, deadly creatures and these miners that have been infected. So it sounds like something that would be maybe like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, something to that extent. It sounds like something that could be good. It has promise to it. So hopefully this will be one that actually, that being that I like, that I'm looking forward to right now, hopefully it's one that I end up liking and I'm not disappointed by. So this next one I actually have mixed thoughts on, and it deals with ghosts, and I love anything that has to deal with spirits and things like that. It's titled Graveyard Games. It's saying here that in the Ascension of Parish Cemetery, it's normal to find teens playing amongst the tombstones. You'll find yourself witnessing the repercussions of the disrespected antics of two teens who have awakened the spirits of the dead. As you roam through the cemetery, you'll win through dark mausoleums and decaying piles of coffins. Now, the reason why I'm kind of on the fence with this one is that it feels like we've heard this type of story before. Maybe not exactly like this, but it seems like something they've used idea-wise in the years past. And I do recall seeing other houses that deal with cemeteries and things like that. And not only that, the concept sounds a bit generic. And it's having two teens that are playing in the cemetery and they're waking all these spirits. And granted, some of these houses that are original, they do have a lot of simple storylines, but sometimes they actually work. This is one that I feel that they just created this house in order to have a total of 10 houses. So it might be just a filler. This is just my opinion on that. But the atmosphere that you're using for the environment does sound promising. You have a cemetery, you have a mausoleum, you have coffins everywhere. And it does sound like it would be a really cool setup. And I could see it being, you're probably going to be in the building, but it's going to look like you're outside, being that we're in a cemetery. So they have a lot to work with. But being that it is in a cemetery setting, this could have been also a good opportunity for them to use Pet Cemetery to create a house for that as well. But I'll keep my expectations at the door for this one, but it does sound like something that may be more than what I thought it would be. It's also saying here that ghosts of every shape and form will rise from the tombstones to exact their revenge as you escape the maze of crumbling tombstones and mausoleums. So it sounds like you're going to be in some type of maze situation. So the visuals probably will look really cool. I'll give it that, but this is something I'm just going to keep my expectations at the door with. Our ninth house on the list is another one that I'm unfortunately not too sure about. It's titled Nightingales Blood Pit. The story is saying its ancient Rome is suffering its worst drought in centuries. The ruthless emperor has declared the gladiatorial games to continue non-stop until the rains return. The gruesome bloodshed of the games is horrifying enough, but then comes the creatures. It then goes on to say that as the blood soaks into the earth, the nightingales feed on the dead and the dying. The nightingales are a grisly race of creatures that have been there since the dawn of time. You may think you're familiar with their past feeding frenzies, but you haven't seen them like this. You'll try to survive along with the gladiators as the ravenous nightingales tear into their victims and notice that fresh blood has come into their midst. So with all that being said, I am a big fan of anything that's historical, epic type of movies, things like that. And then when you make it into a house, that's actually pretty exciting to walk through that because you're walking, in this case, ancient Rome. So you're seeing all the Colosseums and the Roman guards all dressed up and the gladiators as well. So look-wise, this is something I'm really looking forward to. As for the horror elements, you have the Romans are dealing with this drought, and then you have these nightingales, these creatures we've never heard of, and they're hearing now that there's fresh meat. We're coming into that now. So that seems that that's the threat for us. So I feel it's going to be not necessarily a unfamiliar take on an original house that Universal's done before, but once again, this sounds like a house that kind of sounds like a filler in order to make their total of 10 houses. But hopefully this is one that I am proven wrong once again about. The last house we have here is one that I'm actually really excited about, and out of all the original houses, it's the one I'm probably anticipating the most if I had to pick one of them, and that is Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. It says here, deep in the remote tundra of the Yukon, lodgers and trappers seek refuge from the frigid grip of an Arctic blizzard. But out in the darkness, a terror lurks far more dangerous than the deluge of snow and ice. These unfortunate souls have intruded into a territory that is haunted by their worst nightmares, entering a lodging camp that's been torn apart, floors caked with snow, bones, and gore. Right outside, screams are frozen on the faces of those who fled the towering monster, only to succumb to the elements, but there's no escape from the beast as brutal as the winter. I think I'm just excited just by reading the description for this. It reminds me a lot of The Thing, and if you remember The Thing, for Halloween Horror Nights, they made it into a house 2 times from what I recall. And the movie itself also takes place in Antarctica. Here it's in the Yukon, but they're both in this snowy type of blizzard atmosphere. So I feel that's where we're going to get the same look. And it's also saying that we're getting a lodging camp we're going to be walking through. We're seeing snow, bones, and gore all over the place. So that's going to be really cool to see that. And not only that, we get the Yeti, an iconic monster that almost everyone has heard of. So this is something that might be pretty good. It might be something that will probably surprise a lot of people, but this also may be another house where the lines might be a little bit short, because they're going to have houses like Us and Stranger Things probably dominating all the lines. So if there's anything that you want to do and you can't find something that's going to fill up your time that may not be a big wait, this one and the other 3 original houses may be the best way to go. And that, my friends, was the 10 houses that are being announced for Halloween Horror Nights 2019. I cannot wait, but tell me guys in the comments below, which house are you looking forward to the most? And do you even plan on going? I'd like to hear that as well. Maybe I'll see you there. But thank you guys so much for hearing my little recap here of these 10 houses. I just wanted to make this just for fun, because I haven't done a lot of videos on the theme parks, and this is something I go to every year. But anyways guys, consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be back for more regarding theme parks, movies, TV shows. You all are awesome. You all have a great day.